Marcus Cole thought he was just taking a high-paying security job to give his 7-year-old daughter the stability she deserved. What he didn't know was that his new employer, billionaire Evelyn Harrington, had a reputation for being one of the most cold-hearted, prejudiced women in the city. The kind of woman who made grown men quit after just days on the job. But when forced proximity in her isolated mansion begins to crack both their carefully constructed walls, Marcus discovers that Evelyn's cruelty might be hiding the deepest pain of all. As a vulnerable child becomes the bridge between two broken hearts, neither Marcus nor Evelyn realizes they're about to face a choice that will either destroy them both or create the family neither thought they deserved. But some secrets run deeper than prejudice, and some transformations come at a price that will shock everyone who thinks they know how this story ends. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this love story is about to take you on a journey you'll never forget. Marcus Cole stared at his phone screen, reading the message for the third time. The numbers didn't change. The job offer was real, and the money was more than he'd made in 6 months. "Daddy?" Lily's voice drifted from the kitchen where she sat eating cereal. "You look worried." He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked over to her. At 7 years old, his daughter noticed everything. Her dark eyes, so much like her mother's, watched him with concern. "Just work stuff, baby girl." He kissed the top of her head. "Finish your breakfast. Mrs. Johnson will be here soon." But Lily wasn't fooled. She stirred her cereal slowly. "Is it about money again?" Marcus's chest tightened. She was too young to carry his worries, but kids always knew more than adults thought they did. "Don't worry about that. That's Daddy's job." The phone buzzed again. The same number. Marcus stepped into the hallway to answer. "Mr. Cole, this is Thomas Reed. I hope you've had time to consider our offer." "I'm still thinking about it." Marcus kept his voice low. "You mentioned other security professionals turned it down. Why?" There was a pause. "Ms. Harrington can be demanding. She values privacy above all else. Some found her expectations difficult." That was a polite way of saying something Marcus suspected but didn't want to believe. In his 10 years of private security work, he'd learned to read between the lines. Rich clients who scared away multiple guards usually had one thing in common. "I need to know what I'm walking into," Marcus said. "Ms. Harrington is a successful businesswoman who needs protection. Nothing more complicated than that." But Marcus heard what wasn't said. The hesitation. The careful words. This job came with problems. "I have a daughter," Marcus said finally. "She's 7. If I take this position, she comes with me. Non-negotiable." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll need to discuss that with Ms. Harrington. Can you be here at 11 for an interview? The address is 1247 Hillcrest Drive." Marcus knew the area. Old money, big houses, the kind of place where his truck would stand out like a sore thumb. "I'll be there." He hung up and found Lily watching him from the doorway. She'd finished her cereal and put on her backpack. "Are we moving again?" she asked quietly. The question hit him like a punch to the gut. They'd moved 3 times in 2 years. Each time, Marcus thought he'd found steady work. Each time, something went wrong. A client who didn't like his attitude. A company that restructured. Always polite reasons. Always the same result. "Maybe," he said honestly. "Would that be okay?" Lily shrugged, but he saw the worry in her eyes. "Will there be kids to play with?" "I don't know yet, but if we move, it'll be somewhere nice. I promise." Mrs. Johnson knocked on the door. Their neighbor was a blessing, an older woman who watched Lily after school for almost nothing. She knew Marcus was struggling, though he'd never said so directly. "Good morning, sunshine," Mrs. Johnson said to Lily, then looked at Marcus. "Job interview?" Something like that. He hugged Lily tight. Be good for Mrs. Johnson. I'll see you after school. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby girl. Marcus drove through the city, his old truck struggling up the hills toward Hillcrest Drive. The houses grew bigger and more spread out as he climbed. By the time he reached 1247, he felt like he'd entered a different world. The Harrington estate sat behind tall iron gates. Marcus pressed the intercom button and waited. Mr. Cole? Yes, sir. The gates opened with a smooth, electronic hum. Marcus drove up a winding driveway lined with perfect trees and flowers that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The house, mansion really, was white stone with tall windows and columns. It looked like something from a movie. He parked near the front steps, straightened his tie, and walked to the door. Before he could knock, it opened. A man in his 50s stood there, wearing a perfectly pressed suit. His gray hair was combed back, and his eyes were kind but cautious. Mr. Cole, I'm Thomas Reed, the estate manager. Thank you for coming. They shook hands. Thomas had a firm grip and met Marcus's eyes directly. That was something, at least. Ms. Harrington is in the study. This way, please. The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. High ceilings, expensive art, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors. Thomas stopped outside a heavy wooden door and knocked. Come in. The voice was crisp, businesslike. Female. Thomas opened the door and stepped aside. Ms. Harrington, this is Marcus Cole. The woman behind the massive desk looked up from her computer. She was younger than Marcus expected, maybe early 30s, with blonde hair pulled back severely and sharp blue eyes. She wore a white blouse that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week. She looked him up and down slowly, her expression unreadable. Mr. Cole. She didn't stand or offer to shake hands. Sit down. Marcus took the chair across from her desk. The leather was soft and expensive. Everything in this room was expensive. I've reviewed your resume, she said, holding up a thin folder. 10 years in private security, military background. References seem adequate. Adequate. The word stung, but Marcus kept his expression neutral. I understand you need personal protection, he said. I need someone competent, someone who understands discretion. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Someone who knows their place. There it was. The tone he'd heard before from clients who looked at him and saw a problem instead of a solution. Marcus had dealt with subtle racism his whole career, but this felt more direct. I'm very good at my job, he said calmly. We'll see. She leaned back in her chair. The position requires full-time residential security. You'd live on the property. The salary is generous, but I expect complete dedication. I have a daughter. The words hung in the air. Miss Harrington's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. A daughter. She's 7. If I take this job, she stays with me. Ms. Harrington was quiet for a long moment. She drummed her fingers on the desk, perfectly manicured nails against expensive wood. Children complicate things, she said finally. She's quiet, well-behaved. She won't be any trouble. Children are always trouble. The way she said it made Marcus think she was speaking from experience, but her tone was flat, emotionless. Look, Ms. Harrington, Marcus said, I'm good at what I do. I've protected executives, politicians, celebrities. I know how to stay invisible when I need to and step up when things go wrong. But my daughter is part of the package. If that's a problem, I understand. He started to stand up. Sit down, Mr. Cole. Marcus hesitated, then sat back down. Tell me about your daughter. The question surprised him. Her name is Lily. She's in 2nd grade. Loves books and drawing. She's the best thing in my life. Where is her mother? Dead. Car accident 3 years ago. Something shifted in Ms. Harrington's expression. Just for a second, the hard mask slipped, and Marcus saw something that might have been sympathy. Then it was gone. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. She was quiet again, staring at something on her computer screen. Marcus waited. He'd learned not to fill silences during interviews. Let them think. Finally, she looked up. The guest cottage has 2 bedrooms. It's been empty for months. If you take the position, you and your daughter can stay there. Marcus felt a flutter of hope. What exactly would my duties be? Personal security, some travel, background checks on visitors, general safety oversight. She paused. And absolute discretion about my private life. What happens on this property stays on this property. No exceptions. Of course. I've had problems with previous security personnel. People who thought they could become involved in my personal affairs. People who forgot their place. Her voice was cold again. I won't tolerate that. I'm not looking to get involved in anyone's personal life, Marcus said. I just want to do my job and provide for my daughter. Ms. Harrington studied him for another long moment. Marcus had the feeling she was weighing something in her mind, making a decision that went beyond just hiring security. The salary is $60,000 per year, plus housing and utilities. Health insurance included. 2 weeks paid vacation after the first year. She slid a contract across the desk. If you're interested, take this home. Read it carefully. Let me know your decision by tomorrow. Marcus picked up the contract. The salary was more than he'd made at his last 3 jobs combined. It was enough to give Lily stability, maybe even save some money for college. Thank you, he said. I'll review it tonight. Thomas will show you the cottage so you know what you'd be getting into. She was already looking back at her computer screen. That's all, Mr. Cole. Marcus stood up. Thank you for your time, Ms. Harrington. She didn't look up or respond. Thomas was waiting outside the study door. This way, please. They walked through the house and out a back door onto a stone patio. The grounds stretched out like a private park. Perfect grass, flower beds, even a small pond. In the distance, Marcus could see a smaller building tucked among the trees. That's the guest cottage, Thomas said as they walked along a gravel path. It hasn't been used in some time, but it's well maintained. Can I ask what happened to the last security person? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Ms. Harrington values her privacy. Sometimes people misunderstand what that means. They reached the cottage. It was like a tiny version of the main house. White stone, tall windows, covered porch. Thomas unlocked the door and stepped inside. The cottage was beautiful. Hardwood floors, stone fireplace, kitchen with granite counters. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. The master bedroom had windows that looked out over the gardens. It's fully furnished, Thomas said. Utilities included, as Ms. Harrington mentioned. Marcus stood in the living room, trying to imagine Lily here. She'd love the fireplace, and there was space for her to run and play outside. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Straight answer. What am I getting myself into? Thomas looked uncomfortable. Ms. Harrington is complicated. She's been through some difficult experiences. She doesn't trust easily. And the racial thing? Thomas met his eyes. She can be old-fashioned in her thinking, but she's not cruel. Not intentionally. Marcus nodded. He'd dealt with old-fashioned thinking his whole life. The question was whether this job was worth putting up with it. They walked back to the main house in silence. At his truck, Thomas handed him a business card. My direct number? He said. If you take the position and need anything, call me. Thank you. Marcus drove back down the hill, thinking about the conversation. Ms. Harrington was everything he'd expected. Cold, controlling, probably prejudiced. But the money was real. The cottage was beautiful. And Lily needed stability. By the time he picked up his daughter from Mrs. Johnson's house, Marcus had made up his mind. But he wanted to talk to Lily first. She deserved to know what they might be getting into. That evening, after dinner and homework, Marcus sat with Lily on their small couch. She was reading a picture book about a princess who saved her kingdom. Lily, I need to talk to you about something important. She looked up, marking her place with her finger. The job? Yeah, it's a good job, good money. But if I take it, we'd have to move again. Lily closed her book and turned to face him. Where? A big house in the hills. We'd live in a smaller house on the same property. It's really nice. You'd have your own room, and there's a big yard to play in. What about school? There's a good school nearby, and the lady I'd work for said we could stay as long as I do a good job. Lily was quiet, thinking. At 7, she was already wise beyond her years. Too wise, maybe. Do you like the lady? She asked. Marcus thought about how to answer that. I don't know her very well yet. She's serious, businesslike, but she seems fair. Is she mean? I don't think so. Just different from us. Lily nodded slowly. Will you be happy there? The question caught him off guard. When was the last time someone had asked if he'd be happy? I think so, he said. We'd be together, and we'd have a nice place to live. That makes me happy. Then we should go. Marcus pulled her into a hug. You sure? I'm sure, Daddy. Besides, maybe the lady just needs friends. Maybe she's lonely. Out of the mouths of babes. Marcus kissed the top of Lily's head and reached for his phone to call Thomas Reed. Tomorrow, their new life would begin. The next morning came too early. Marcus had barely slept, running through every possible scenario in his head. But when he looked at Lily carefully packing her stuffed animals into a cardboard box, her face bright with excitement, he knew he'd made the right choice. Can I bring all my books? She asked, holding up a stack of picture books. Every single one, Marcus promised. We'll have plenty of room. By 10 o'clock, their few belongings were loaded into the truck. Mrs. Johnson stood on her porch, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. You call me if you need anything, she said to Lily. And you be good for your daddy. I will. Thank you for taking care of me. The old woman's face crumpled. She'd grown to love Lily like her own granddaughter. Marcus shook her hand. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us. That little girl is special. You take good care of her. Always. The drive to the estate felt different this time. Lily pressed her face to the window, watching the houses get bigger and the yards get wider. Wow, she breathed when the gates opened and they drove up to the main house. It's like a castle. Remember what we talked about, Marcus said gently. This is Ms. Harrington's house. We're guests here. We need to be respectful and quiet. I remember, Daddy. Thomas was waiting by the front steps. He smiled when he saw Lily climb out of the truck. You must be Lily, he said, walking over to them. I'm Thomas. Welcome to your new home. Lily looked up at him with her big, serious eyes. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Your house is very pretty. Thomas chuckled. It's Ms. Harrington's house, but I help take care of it, just like your daddy is going to help keep everyone safe. As they unloaded the truck, Marcus kept glancing toward the main house. He hadn't seen Ms. Harrington yet, but he could feel eyes watching from the tall windows. The cottage looked even better in daylight. Lily ran from room to room, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Daddy, Look, my room has a window seat. She climbed onto the cushioned bench under the bedroom window. I can read here and watch the birds. That sounds perfect, baby girl. They spent the afternoon settling in. Marcus unpacked their clothes while Lily arranged her books on the shelves in her room. It was the nicest place they'd ever lived, and Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he wasn't worried about next month's rent. Around 4 o'clock, Thomas knocked on the cottage door. Ms. Harrington would like to see you, he said to Marcus. Just you for now. Marcus looked at Lily, who was coloring at the kitchen table. Will you be okay here for a few minutes? Yes, Daddy. I'm drawing our new house. Marcus followed Thomas back to the main house. This time, Ms. Harrington was waiting in a different room, a formal living room with expensive furniture and paintings on the walls. She stood by the window, still wearing that perfectly pressed white blouse. Mr. Cole. She turned to face him. In the afternoon light, he could see she was younger than he'd first thought. Maybe 32 or 33. I trust you're settling in? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I wanted to go over some ground rules now that you're officially employed. She gestured to a chair, but remained standing herself. Your primary responsibility is my personal security. That means you'll accompany me to business meetings, social events, and any travel. Understood. I keep a regular schedule. I'm usually in my home office by 7 a.m. I may have meetings here during the day. Evenings are typically quiet, but that can change quickly. Marcus nodded, taking mental notes. I also want to be clear about boundaries, she continued, her voice becoming cooler. We are not friends. This is a professional relationship. I don't share personal information, and I don't expect you to share yours. Of course. And regarding your daughter, she paused, looking out the window toward the cottage. Children can be disruptive. I expect her to stay in the cottage or the immediate grounds around it. She is not to enter the main house without explicit permission. Something twisted in Marcus's chest. She's 7 years old. She's not going to cause any trouble. Children always cause trouble, Mr. Cole. It's their nature. Her tone was flat, final. These rules are non-negotiable. Marcus wanted to argue, to defend Lily, but he bit back his words. They needed this job. They needed the stability. I understand, he said quietly. Good. Thomas will show you the security systems and protocols tomorrow. For tonight, just get settled. She turned back to the window. That's all. Marcus walked back to the cottage, frustrated and worried. Maybe this had been a mistake. Ms. Harrington was even colder than he'd expected, and her attitude toward Lily bothered him more than her subtle racism. He found Lily still at the kitchen table, but now she was looking out the window instead of coloring. What are you looking at, baby girl? The lady, Lily said softly. She's watching us from her window. Marcus looked toward the main house. Sure enough, a figure stood silhouetted in one of the tall windows. As soon as she noticed them looking, Miss Harrington stepped back into the shadows. She seemed sad, Lily said. What makes you say that? I don't know. She just looks lonely standing there by herself. That evening, Marcus made dinner while Lily unpacked her books. They were just sitting down to eat when there was a knock at the door. Thomas stood on the porch, holding a covered dish. From the main kitchen, he said. Miss Harrington thought you might not have had time to shop for groceries yet. Marcus lifted the cover. Roast chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. It smelled amazing and looked like something from a fancy restaurant. Please tell Miss Harrington thank you, Marcus said. Actually, she's right behind me. Marcus looked up, surprised. Miss Harrington stood about 10 feet away, half hidden in the shadows between the cottage and the main house. She'd changed from her business clothes into dark pants and a simple sweater, but she still looked perfectly put together. "Ms. Harrington," Marcus said, "thank you for this. You didn't have to—" "It's nothing," she interrupted. "I simply didn't want you to have to worry about dinner your first night." Lily appeared beside Marcus in the doorway. She looked at Ms. Harrington with open curiosity. "Thank you for the food," Lily said politely. "It smells really good." For a moment, Ms. Harrington just stared at her. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or something softer. "You're welcome," she said finally. Her voice was different when she spoke to Lily, less harsh. "Would you like to have dinner with us?" Lily asked. "Daddy made mac and cheese, but your food looks fancier." "Lily," Marcus said quickly, "Ms. Harrington is probably busy." "No." The word came out sharp, almost panicked. "No, I have work to do." She turned and walked back toward the main house, her footsteps quick on the gravel path. Thomas watched her go, shaking his head slightly. "She's not used to this," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Children, family, normal conversation." Thomas looked at Lily, who was still watching Miss Harrington disappear into the house. "She's been alone for a very long time." That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat on the cottage porch. The estate was quiet except for the sound of crickets and a fountain somewhere in the distance. Lights glowed in several windows of the main house. He thought about Thomas's words. Miss Harrington had seemed almost frightened when Lily invited her to dinner. Not angry or disgusted, but scared, like she didn't know how to respond to simple kindness. A movement caught his eye. A figure was walking slowly through the gardens behind the main house. Even in the dim light, he could tell it was Miss Harrington. She moved like someone who couldn't sleep, couldn't settle. Marcus watched her for several minutes. She stopped by the fountain, then continued walking. Round and round the garden, alone in the darkness. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe she was just lonely. The next morning brought Marcus's first real day of work. Thomas gave him a tour of the security systems. Cameras, alarms, sensors. Everything was top of the line and expertly installed. "Previous break-in attempts?" Marcus asked as they checked the perimeter. "3 in the past year," Thomas said. "Nothing serious. Probably kids or opportunistic thieves. But Ms. Harrington takes security very seriously since—" He trailed off. "Since what?" Thomas was quiet for a moment. "That's not my story to tell. But she has good reasons to be careful." They finished the security walkthrough and returned to the main house. Ms. Harrington was in her study on a conference call. Through the open door, Marcus could hear her voice. Sharp, commanding, completely in control. This was her domain, and she ruled it absolutely. "She has meetings here twice a week," Thomas explained. "Business associates, lawyers, that sort of thing. Your job is to screen visitors and stay alert for any problems." "What kind of problems?" "Angry business partners, disgruntled employees, anyone who might hold a grudge." Thomas paused. "Ms. Harrington can be difficult to work with. Some people take it personally." Around noon, a car pulled up to the front of the house. Marcus watched from the security room as a woman in expensive clothes got out and walked to the front door. She was tall, blonde, and moved with the confidence of someone used to getting her way. "That's Claire Whitmore," Thomas said. "Social acquaintance. She visits regularly." Marcus went to the front door to let her in, but she brushed past him without a glance. "Where's Evelyn?" she demanded. "Ms. Harrington is in her study," Marcus said politely. "May I tell her you're here?" Claire looked at him then, really looked at him, and her expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and her mouth tightened. "You're the new security," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am." "I see." Her tone was cold, dismissive. "Well, I know where the study is. I'll announce myself." She walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Marcus followed at a distance, his instincts telling him to stay alert. Claire knocked once on the study door and walked in without waiting for permission. "Evelyn, darling, we need to talk." Marcus positioned himself outside the door, close enough to respond if needed, but far enough to give them privacy. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but voices carry. "Completely lost your mind," Claire was saying. "A live-in security guard? And with a child? Have you thought about what people will say?" "I don't care what people say." Ms. Harrington's voice was steady but strained. "Of course you do. Your reputation matters, especially now, and bringing them into your home. Evelyn, you can't trust these people." "These people?" Ms. Harrington's voice was dangerous now. "You know what I mean? They're different from us. They have different values, different priorities. Before you know it, they'll be taking advantage of your kindness." Marcus felt his jaw clench. He'd heard this conversation before, in different words, different settings. The message was always the same. "Claire," Ms. Harrington said slowly, "I hired a security professional. His qualifications are excellent." "His qualifications?" "Evelyn, look at the big picture. What happens when he starts asking for raises or special favors? What happens when that child of his breaks something expensive? You're setting yourself up for problems." There was a long silence. Marcus found himself holding his breath, waiting for Ms. Harrington's response. When it came, her voice was cold and controlled. "Marcus Cole is qualified for this position. His personal life is irrelevant as long as he does his job." "If you say so," Claire said, but her tone suggested she thought Ms. Harrington was making a huge mistake. "Just be careful. Promise me that." "I'm always careful." Marcus heard chairs moving and stepped back from the door. A few moments later, Claire emerged, her face tight with disapproval. She glanced at Marcus as she passed, her expression making her feelings clear. After Claire left, Marcus knocked on the study door. "Come in." Miss Harrington was standing by the window again, her back to the door. Her shoulders were tense. "Everything all right?" Marcus asked. "Fine." She didn't turn around. "Was there something you needed?" "Just checking in, making sure the meeting went smoothly." It did, but Marcus could hear the strain in her voice. Whatever Claire had said had gotten to her. "Ms. Harrington," he said carefully, "if there are any concerns about my work or my family being here, I'd rather hear them directly." She turned around then, studying his face. "What makes you think there are concerns?" "Just want to make sure we're starting off on the right foot." For a moment, she looked like she might say something important. Then the mask slipped back into place. "There are no concerns, Mr. Cole. As long as you do your job, we'll get along fine." But that evening, as Marcus was making dinner, he saw Miss Harrington in the garden again. This time, she wasn't walking. She was sitting on a bench by the fountain, perfectly still, staring at nothing. She looked, Marcus thought, like the loneliest person in the world. 3 weeks passed quietly. Marcus settled into the rhythm of the job. Morning security checks, accompanying Ms. Harrington to meetings, evening patrols. She was professional, but distant, treating him like expensive equipment rather than a person. Lily adapted faster than Marcus expected. She found wonder in everything: the fountain that lit up at night, the peacocks that wandered the grounds, the library in the main house that Thomas had quietly given her permission to use when Ms. Harrington was out. "Look, Daddy." Lily ran to him one afternoon, holding a thick book with a faded cover. Mr. Thomas said this used to be a children's book, but now it's old and special. Marcus looked at the title. The Secret Garden. The binding was worn, the pages yellow with age. Where did you find this? In the library. There's a whole shelf of old kids' books. Mr. Thomas said they belonged to someone who lived here a long time ago. That evening, Marcus mentioned it to Thomas while they checked the security cameras. Those books have been there for years, Thomas said. They belonged to Ms. Harrington when she was young. I'm surprised she let Lily borrow one. She doesn't know. Lily found it when you were showing her the library. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Maybe it's better if she doesn't know. Miss Harrington doesn't like reminders of her childhood. Rough family? Something like that. Thomas's expression was carefully neutral. Her parents died when she was 12. She came to live with her aunt and uncle in this house. They weren't warm people. Marcus thought about Lily, so full of life and curiosity, and tried to imagine her growing up in this cold, perfect house with people who didn't know how to love a child. The picture made him sad. The next morning brought the first real test of Marcus's skills. He was in the security room when the cameras picked up a man climbing over the back wall of the estate. Marcus watched him drop to the ground and start moving toward the main house. Stay with Miss Harrington, Marcus told Thomas over the radio. I've got an intruder. Marcus moved quickly through the grounds, staying out of sight. The man was young, maybe 25, wearing dirty clothes and moving like someone who'd done this before. He had a backpack and kept checking his phone. Marcus waited until the man was far from any exit, then stepped into view. That's far enough, he said calmly. The man spun around, startled. Hey man, I'm just trespassing, Marcus finished. Turn around and walk back the way you came. The man's eyes darted around, looking for escape routes. Marcus could see him calculating, wondering if he could run or fight his way out. Look, the man said, I'm not here to steal anything. I just need to talk to the lady who lives here. She owes me money. No, she doesn't. You don't know what you're talking about, man. This is between me and her. Marcus stepped closer. It's between you and me now. You can walk away, or I can call the police. Your choice. The man looked at Marcus's calm expression, his steady stance, and seemed to realize this wasn't going to go his way. This isn't over, he muttered, but he was already backing toward the wall. Yes, it is. Marcus followed at a distance until the man climbed back over the wall and disappeared. Then he radioed Thomas. All clear. Subject has left the property. Copy that. Ms. Harrington wants to see you in her study. Marcus found Ms. Harrington standing behind her desk, her face tight with worry. What happened? She asked immediately. Young man, probably mid-20s, climbed the back wall. Said you owed him money. I convinced him to leave. Convinced him how? I asked politely. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. I'm sure you did. Did he give you a name? No, but the cameras caught everything. We can get a clear image if you want to file a police report. Miss Harrington was quiet, thinking. No police, not yet, but I want extra patrols for the next few days. Any idea who he might be? I have business dealings with many people, Mr. Cole. Not all of them handle disappointment well. It was a non-answer, but Marcus didn't push. I'll increase security measures. Maybe we should also talk about... A crash from outside cut him off. They both froze. What was that? Miss Harrington asked. Marcus was already moving toward the door. Stay here. He ran through the house and out onto the back patio. The sound had come from the cottage. Marcus's heart stopped when he saw a ladder lying on the ground under Lily's bedroom window. Her window was open. "Lily?" he called, running toward the cottage. Silence. Marcus burst through the cottage door. "Lily." "I'm okay, Daddy." Her voice came from the kitchen. "But I think I broke something." Marcus found her standing over the remains of a glass vase that had been sitting on the kitchen counter. Water and flowers were scattered across the floor. "I heard a noise outside," she said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "It scared me, and I knocked over the pretty vase. I'm sorry, Daddy." Marcus pulled her into his arms, relief flooding through him. "It's okay, baby girl. It's just a vase. But it was pretty, and now it's broken. We can clean it up. Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." Marcus looked toward the open window. The ladder outside belonged to the groundskeeping crew, but they weren't scheduled to work today. Someone had moved it there. "Lily, I need you to go to your room and stay there for a few minutes, okay? Don't come out until I say." "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. I just need to check something." Marcus made sure Lily was safe upstairs, then went back outside. The ladder was positioned directly under her window, too perfectly placed to be an accident. Someone had been planning to get inside the cottage, the intruder from earlier. He hadn't left the property after all. He'd been watching, waiting for his chance. Marcus pulled out his radio. "Thomas, I need you to call the police now. Our friend came back." As he waited for the police, Marcus checked the cottage from top to bottom. Nothing was missing. Nothing else was disturbed. But the thought of what could have happened if that man had gotten inside while Lily was alone made Marcus's blood run cold. Ms. Harrington appeared in the cottage doorway just as Marcus was cleaning up the broken vase. "Is she all right?" she asked. Marcus looked up, surprised. Ms. Harrington rarely came to the cottage, and her voice carried genuine concern. "She's fine. Scared, but fine." Ms. Harrington stepped into the kitchen, looking at the broken glass. "This was my grandmother's vase." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Ms. Harrington, I'm so sorry. I'll replace it." "It doesn't matter." She said it so quickly that Marcus stopped talking. "I mean, it's just glass. No one was hurt. That's what's important." She knelt down and picked up a piece of the broken vase, turning it over in her fingers. "Is Lily upstairs?" she asked. "Yes, she's pretty shaken up." Miss Harrington was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, she stood up and walked toward the stairs. "Ms. Harrington?" Marcus followed her. "You don't need to—" But she was already climbing the stairs. Marcus heard her knock gently on Lily's door. "Lily? It's Miss Harrington. May I come in?" Marcus reached the top of the stairs as Lily's door opened. His daughter stood there in her pajamas, her eyes still red from crying. "I'm sorry I broke your pretty vase," Lily said immediately. Ms. Harrington crouched down so she was at Lily's eye level. "That's not why I'm here," she said gently. "I wanted to make sure you're okay. Being scared is no fun." Lily nodded. "The noise was really loud." "I bet it was. But you're safe now. Your daddy made sure of that. He's really good at keeping people safe." "Yes," Ms. Harrington said, glancing up at Marcus. "He is." They stayed like that for a moment. Ms. Harrington crouched in front of Lily, Marcus standing behind them both. It felt like something important was happening, though Marcus couldn't say exactly what. "Would you like me to read you a story?" Ms. Harrington asked suddenly. "To help you feel better?" Lily's face lit up. "You would do that?" "If you'd like." Lily ran to her bookshelf and came back with the old copy of The Secret Garden. Ms. Harrington took the book and Marcus saw her expression change. Her fingers traced the cover gently. "Where did you get this?" she asked softly. "Mr. Thomas said I could borrow it from the library. It used to belong to a little girl who lived in the big house." Miss Harrington was very still. "Did he tell you anything about that little girl?" "Just that she grew up and moved away." Marcus saw Miss Harrington's jaw tighten slightly. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Well, let's see what this little girl liked to read about." They sat on Lily's bed, Lily in the middle, Miss Harrington on one side, Marcus on the other. Miss Harrington opened the book to the first chapter and began to read. Her voice was different when she read. Softer. The harsh edges were gone, replaced by something warm and almost musical. Marcus found himself listening not just to the story, but to the way she told it. Lily was asleep before the second chapter ended. Miss Harrington closed the book quietly and stood up. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "That was really kind." Miss Harrington looked down at Lily's sleeping face. "She's a good child," she said quietly. "You should be proud." "I am." They walked downstairs together. At the front door, Miss Harrington paused. "Mr. Cole, about tonight. I want you to know that I take full responsibility. If my security hadn't been adequate—" "Your security was fine," Marcus interrupted. "This was just someone who was more determined than usual. It won't happen again." "How can you be sure?" "Because now I know what we're dealing with. I'll adjust our procedures accordingly." She nodded, but she still looked troubled. "I never intended for your daughter to be put at risk by working here." "She wasn't, and even if she had been, that's my decision to make. We knew the job came with some risks." Ms. Harrington studied his face. "Why did you take this job, Mr. Cole? Really?" The question was more personal than anything she'd asked before. Marcus considered giving her a polite non-answer, but something about the evening, the fear, the relief, the way she'd read to Lily, made him want to be honest. "Because Lily deserves stability," he said simply. "She's already lost her mother. I wasn't going to let her lose her home too." Miss Harrington was quiet for a long moment. "Your wife," she said finally. "How long were you married?" 6 years. We were high school sweethearts. She was—" Marcus stopped, surprised by the sudden tightness in his throat. "She was the best person I knew." "I'm sorry you lost her." "Thank you." Another pause. Then Miss Harrington said something that surprised him. "I never knew my parents very well. They died when I was young. But I remember my mother reading to me sometimes, when I was very small. Tonight, with Lily, it reminded me of that." Before Marcus could respond, she turned and walked back toward the main house, disappearing into the shadows between the cottage and the mansion. Marcus stood in his doorway for a long time, watching the lights in her windows and thinking about the woman who lived alone in that big, cold house. Tonight, for just a few minutes, she'd seemed like someone completely different, someone warmer, someone who might have been lonely enough to climb out of her tower and read stories to a little girl who reminded her of better times. The next morning brought police reports and security upgrades and a return to the usual routine. But something had shifted. When Miss Harrington passed the cottage on her morning walk, she looked toward Lily's window. When Lily waved from the kitchen window at breakfast, Miss Harrington lifted her hand in a small wave back. It was progress. Small, maybe, but real. And for the first time since taking this job, Marcus began to think that maybe, just maybe, they were all going to be okay. 2 months passed in a careful dance of boundaries and small kindnesses. Miss Harrington maintained her professional distance, But Marcus noticed changes. She no longer flinched when Lily appeared in the garden. Sometimes she even stopped to watch when Lily was reading under the old oak tree. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Marcus was reviewing security footage when Thomas knocked on the door of the cottage. "Ms. Harrington is asking for you," he said. "Something about the Whitmore contract." Marcus found her in the study, pacing behind her desk. Papers were scattered everywhere, and her usually perfect hair was slightly messed from running her fingers through it. "Mr. Cole, I need to go to San Francisco tomorrow. Business meeting. We'll be back the same day, but it means leaving early and returning late." "Not a problem. I'll make the arrangements." "There's a complication." She stopped pacing and looked at him directly. "Tomorrow is a teacher development day. No school." Marcus's heart sank. Mrs. Johnson was visiting her sister out of state. He didn't have anyone else who could watch Lily for a 12-hour day. "I can find someone," he said, though he had no idea who. "Actually," Ms. Harrington said slowly, "I have a different suggestion. What if Lily came with us?" Marcus stared at her. "To San Francisco?" "The meeting is only 2 hours. She could wait in the hotel lobby. They have a children's area. Or she could stay in the car with you while I conduct business." "Are you sure?" "You said—" "I know what I said." Miss Harrington's voice was stiff. "But circumstances change. Besides, she's well behaved. It shouldn't be a problem." That evening, Marcus told Lily about the trip. Her eyes went wide with excitement. "I've never been on a plane before," she said. "It's not a plane, baby girl. We're driving. But it's still going to be a big adventure." They left at 5 a.m. Ms. Harrington sat in the back seat of the black SUV, working on her laptop while Marcus drove. Lily sat beside her, reading The Secret Garden and occasionally looking out the window at the changing landscape. "Are we in the mountains yet?" Lily asked as they climbed through rolling hills dotted with cattle. "Getting close," Marcus said. "I've never seen mountains before." Lily pressed her face to the window. "They're so big." Ms. Harrington looked up from her computer. "You've really never seen mountains?" "We've never been outside the city," Lily said simply. "Daddy says travel costs money we don't have." Ms. Harrington was quiet for a moment. Then she closed her laptop. "Would you like me to tell you about these mountains?" she asked. For the next hour, Ms. Harrington pointed out landmarks and told stories about the area. She knew about the old gold mines, the ghost towns, the Native American tribes who had lived there first. Lily listened with rapt attention, asking questions that Ms. Harrington answered patiently. Marcus watched in the rearview mirror, amazed. This wasn't the cold, controlled woman he worked for. This was someone who had once been curious about the world, someone who remembered what it felt like to discover new things. They reached San Francisco by noon. The meeting was at a downtown hotel, and Ms. Harrington had reserved a suite with a separate sitting room. "Lily can wait here while we conduct business," she told Marcus. "There's room service if she gets hungry, and the concierge said they have children's books at the front desk." But when they got to the suite, Lily looked overwhelmed. The room was bigger than their old apartment, with tall windows overlooking the busy street far below. She stood in the middle of it, suddenly small and uncertain. "It's very fancy," she whispered to Marcus. Ms. Harrington was gathering her papers when she noticed Lily's expression. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "She's not used to places like this," Marcus said gently. "Maybe I should stay with her?" "No." Ms. Harrington set down her briefcase. "I need you at the meeting. Security, remember?" She walked over to Lily and knelt down. "Are you worried about staying here by yourself?" Lily nodded. "Would it help if I left you something to keep you company?" Miss Harrington reached into her purse and pulled out a small silver locket. She opened it to reveal a tiny photo of a woman with kind eyes. "This was my mother's," she said softly. "When I was your age and scared, I used to hold this and pretend she was with me. Would you like to borrow it?" Lily's eyes went wide. "But what if I lose it?" "You won't. You're very responsible." Miss Harrington fastened the locket around Lily's neck. "There. Now you won't be alone." The meeting went smoothly. Marcus stood by the door while Miss Harrington negotiated with 3 men in expensive suits. She was formidable, sharp, quick, completely in control. These men clearly respected and feared her. But Marcus noticed that she kept checking her watch. The meeting could have gone longer, could have covered more ground, but she wrapped it up efficiently and professionally. "Gentlemen, I think we have an agreement. My lawyers will have the contracts ready by Monday." When they returned to the suite, they found Lily curled up in a chair by the window, reading. She had the locket clutched in her hand. "How did it go?" she asked, looking up. "Very well," Miss Harrington said. "Are you ready for lunch? I thought we might eat somewhere special before we drive home." They had lunch at a restaurant overlooking the bay. Lily was fascinated by the boats and the seagulls and the people walking along the waterfront. Miss Harrington ordered carefully, making sure there were things Lily would eat. "What's your favorite food?" Miss Harrington asked Lily over dessert. "Daddy's mac and cheese," Lily said immediately. "But this ice cream is really good too." "What about your favorite book?" "The Secret Garden. I've read it 3 times now." "3 times?" Miss Harrington smiled, a real smile, not the polite one she used for business. "What do you like about it?" "Mary starts out mean and lonely, but then she finds the garden and makes friends and becomes nice. I like stories where people get better." Miss Harrington's smile faded slightly. "People don't always get better, Lily." "I think they do, if someone helps them." On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat. Miss Harrington covered her with a spare jacket and then moved to the front passenger seat. "You didn't have to include her today," Marcus said quietly. "That was generous." "She's a good traveler, very polite." "Still, I know having us here isn't what you're used to." Miss Harrington was quiet for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the hills golden. "When I was Lily's age," she said finally, "I used to dream about having a family like yours." "What do you mean?" "A father who put me first. Someone who read to me and made sure I felt safe." She looked out the window. "My uncle was very wealthy, but he didn't have much use for children. I spent most of my childhood alone in that big house." Marcus thought about 12-year-old Evelyn rattling around in that mansion with no one to talk to, no one to hug her when she was scared. "That must have been lonely," he said. "It was, but it taught me to depend on myself, to not need anyone." "Everyone needs someone, Miss Harrington." She was quiet again. Then, "Call me Evelyn. When we're not working, I mean." Ms. Harrington seems formal. It was such a small thing, but it felt huge. "Evelyn," Marcus said, testing the name. It suited her better than the cold formality of her last name. "Marcus," she said, and smiled slightly. "I suppose we should use first names, since your daughter has been calling me the nice lady for weeks." "She thinks you're nice?" "According to Thomas, yes. She told him I was sad but not mean." Evelyn shook her head. "Children see things adults miss." When they got home, Lily woke up as Marcus was carrying her into the cottage. "Did we have a good day?" she asked sleepily. "The best day," Marcus said. "Can I give the pretty necklace back to Evelyn now?" Marcus looked toward the main house, where lights were already on in several windows. "Tomorrow, baby girl. She's probably tired." But the next morning, when Marcus went to return the locket, Evelyn surprised him again. "Let Lily keep it," she said. "My mother would have liked her." "Evelyn, I can't. It's too valuable." "It's just sitting in my jewelry box. At least this way, someone will treasure it." That afternoon, Marcus found Evelyn sitting on the cottage porch when he and Lily returned from a trip to the grocery store. "I hope you don't mind," she said, standing up quickly. "I was walking by and thought I might say hello to Lily." But she looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. "Of course," Marcus said. "Lily, look who came to visit." Lily ran to Evelyn and hugged her around the waist. "Thank you for letting me keep the pretty necklace." Evelyn stood very still for a moment, her hands hovering over Lily's shoulders. Then slowly, she hugged her back. "You're welcome, sweetheart." It was the first time Marcus had heard her use a term of endearment for anyone. "Would you like to stay for dinner?" Lily asked. "Daddy's making spaghetti." Evelyn looked at Marcus, uncertain. "You're welcome to join us," he said. "Nothing fancy, but there's plenty." Yes, I'd like that." They cooked together, Marcus handling the pasta and sauce while Evelyn helped Lily make garlic bread. She was surprisingly good in the kitchen, her movements careful and precise. "Where did you learn to cook?" Marcus asked. "The kitchen staff taught me when I was young. My uncle thought cooking was beneath me, but I used to sneak downstairs and help anyway." She smiled at the memory. "The cook, Mrs. Patterson, was one of the few people who was kind to me." After dinner, they sat on the cottage porch while Lily played in the yard. The evening air was warm, and fireflies were beginning to blink among the trees. "This is nice," Evelyn said softly. "Peaceful." "Different from your usual evenings?" "Very different. I usually work until 10, then go to bed. Not much of a social life." "By choice?" Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "Partly. It's hard to trust people when you have money. You never know if they like you or what you can do for them." "That must be lonely." "I thought I preferred it that way." She watched Lily chase fireflies. "But watching you two together, I'm starting to think I might have been wrong." Marcus looked at her profile in the gathering darkness. There was something vulnerable in her expression, something that reminded him of the girl she'd once been. "It's never too late to change," he said quietly. "Isn't it? I've been alone for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to be any other way." "Lily seems to think you're doing fine." Evelyn smiled. "Lily is very generous. She sees the best in people. She learned that from her mother. Sarah was like that, always believing people could be better than they were." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. She would have liked you." "Even with all my flaws?" "Especially with your flaws. She had a thing for fixing broken things." "Is that what I am? Broken?" Marcus looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the perfect clothes and careful composure, he saw someone who had been hurt young and learned to protect herself with walls of ice. "Not broken," he said finally. "Just careful." "Maybe too careful." They sat in comfortable silence until Lily ran back to them, out of breath and glowing with happiness. "I caught 3 fireflies," she announced. "But I let them go so they could find their families." "That was kind of you," Evelyn said. "Daddy says families should stay together." Evelyn's expression grew wistful. "Your daddy is a wise man." "Are you lonely in your big house?" Lily asked with the directness of childhood. "Lily," Marcus started, but Evelyn held up a hand. "It's all right." She considered the question seriously. "Yes, sometimes I am lonely, but today was better. Today I felt like I had friends." "We are your friends," Lily said firmly. "Right, Daddy?" Marcus met Evelyn's eyes. Right. Later, after Lily was in bed, Marcus and Evelyn sat on the porch steps. The night was full of cricket songs and the distant sound of the fountain. Thank you, Evelyn said suddenly. For what? For letting me be part of this. For not making me feel like an outsider. You're not an outsider, Evelyn. This is your home. I've lived here for 20 years, but I've never felt at home until… She trailed off. Until what? Until you and Lily came. Until I remembered what it felt like to have people who were genuinely happy to see me. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something warm and unexpected. Over the past months, he'd come to see past Evelyn's cold exterior to the woman underneath. Tonight, sitting beside her in the darkness, he realized that somewhere along the way, his feelings had deepened beyond friendship. Evelyn, he said carefully, can I ask you something? Of course. That first day, when you interviewed me, you were different than you are now. Colder. More prejudiced? She said quietly. Yeah. Evelyn was silent for so long that Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I was scared. Not of you personally, but of change. Of letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. She looked down at her hands. I said things that day that I'm not proud of. Things that came from fear, not from what I actually believe. What changed your mind? Lily, mostly. It's hard to hold on to prejudice when a 7-year-old is looking at you with complete trust and kindness. She paused. And you, the way you handled that intruder, the way you take care of Lily, the way you've been patient with me even when I didn't deserve it. You showed me who you really are. And I realized my fears were just that. Fears. Marcus reached over and took her hand. She tensed for a moment, then relaxed. I'm glad you gave us a chance, he said. I'm glad you stayed, despite everything. They sat holding hands in the darkness, both of them aware that something important had shifted between them. The boundaries that had defined their relationship were dissolving, replaced by something deeper and more real. Marcus, Evelyn said softly, I need to tell you something. What? I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus felt his heart stop, then start beating double time. Evelyn, I know it's complicated. I know I'm your employer, and I know I haven't always been kind to you. But these past months, watching you with Lily, getting to know who you really are, I can't pretend anymore that this is just professional. Marcus turned to face her fully. In the moonlight, she looked younger, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. It's not just you, he said quietly. I've been fighting the same feelings. Really? Really, but Evelyn, we need to be careful. Think about what this means. For Lily, for your business, for everything. I have been thinking about it. I've thought about nothing else for weeks. She took a deep breath. I know it won't be easy. People will talk. They'll say awful things about both of us. But Marcus, I've been alone my whole life. I don't want to be alone anymore. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. Neither do I. They leaned toward each other slowly, carefully, like people who had been waiting their whole lives for this moment. When their lips met, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Evelyn was smiling, really smiling, with her whole face. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure it out together, one day at a time. Above them, the lights in the main house seemed warmer, more welcoming, and for the first time in 20 years, the big, cold mansion felt like it might become a home. I love you too, Marcus whispered against her forehead. Both of you. You and this crazy, wonderful life we're building. Evelyn closed her eyes and leaned against him, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be loved after all. And in the cottage behind them, Lily slept peacefully, the silver locket around her neck catching the moonlight, already dreaming of the family that was growing stronger every day. The end.